Culture Shift 2021 is in the books. Hey, I'm Neil Gordon with a strategic partner and presenting sponsor from the event, Patrick Reynolds of Crosslink Consulting. Woo!
That was a lot. There was a lot to it.
The burden off of the shoulders. It was a bit of a heavy lift, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was tremendous. It was tremendous. There was a lot of people working tirelessly to put that together, to be present, make sure it was hiccup-free, and that was a giant success.
Yes, it was. It's really should never be judged by numbers, but in the context of a podcast, there were nearly 100 attendees, and there were about 15 really good speakers. We also had about 10 vendors sharing some of their services, and we appreciated the folks at the Space and, of course, Amplified Events that put it together. And it really, really was successful. And I know there were some things that stuck out in terms of comments, like Kurt Mueller gave an impassioned talk about what he went through with his family growing up, and how really he tries to help others with the financial planning and such.
Yeah, we had phenomenal speakers, and to quote, I've talked to Kurt since the event, and he said, that was one of the best events I've been to post-COVID or pre-COVID. That these events, it's normally sell, you're being pitched to constantly, and that wasn't the case with this event. And it was very apparent to the attendees, and it was very apparent to speakers like Kurt as well. So he was one of those speakers, and part of our criteria that we came up with was there would be no selling from the stage. This was our way to give back to attendees. This is our way to enrich them. And then there were plenty of booths, right? There were another 15 or 16 booths that were set up where you could go and engage with some of the speakers and some of the other sponsors. But there was none of that from the stage. This really was about talking to those nearly 100 attendees and helping them understand the impact of what great culture could be for their office, what great culture could mean for their organization. And I'm so glad that not only did the attendees sense that and get that, but also the speakers. And I'm always intentional about the participants are also part of who we're trying to enrich. And I think that was surprising to Kurt and some of the other speakers as well, how much they themselves got out of the event. You often, when you're engaged in something like this, you're often part of the production, and you aren't there to absorb, and that was not the case here. There was a lot that our speakers absorbed. Obviously, there was a lot that our attendees absorbed. They were why we did this.
I was struck by something Sandy Shields from Best Office Solutions said. They carefully adorned our ballroom with really neat office furniture and decorations. It gave you a little vision of what things could be like in the workplace. And she said one of the best parts of being there was she actually was there for all 8 hours with a key employee. And she never would have had that opportunity, and she poured into the employee, and they exchanged ideas, and that was neat.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. And I think that we're going to continue to hear more and more stories like that.
Yeah, so the heavy lifting part, we got through it, and it's kind of like building a sports team. It's next year we're gonna even strive to do better.
Yes. So this was a lot, right? There were like you said, Amplified Events was very heavily involved. The folks at the Space were heavily involved in the planning, the coordinating. There was a lot of time and energy that went into it, but something has been started. This focus on culture, it's a newfound instance, and that was part of our heart when we put this together, when we began the planning of this. We know the impact of what that can do for our Augusta area businesses when they began to take ownership of that culture and when they begin to do the things necessary to shift it. And so we've been thinking through various ideas to keep that engagement and to keep the resources to help enrich them and empower them and ennoble them in the way that they're building culture.
And one of the other speakers is a professional business coach, Jason Goldberg. I thought his term that he came up with was pretty neat.
So I keep saying this over and over. Jason's one of the smartest people I know, and he advises us at Crosslink all the time on our business operations. And he said, this event had the 4 critical things that an event like this has to have. It had great speakers. It had great networking, so the people in the room. Mm-hmm. It had a great venue, and it had great food.
Oh, yes, it did.
So our coffee was from Stone Roastery. It was fantastic. Lots of great comments. They also coordinated with Sheila's Bakery to make sure we had some delightful,
enormous,
giant donuts and other pastries.
Sure.
People couldn't stop talking about that. And then our lunch was catered from Fat Man's, and it was fantastic.
Yes.
And there were snacks even after that.
That's true.
I will add a comment. Our featured speaker was Declan Scott from the Collaborative Way.
And he's out west in Colorado.
So he's spent his life pretty much until the last couple years. He spent his life in Ireland, pretty much on the border of Northern Ireland and Ireland, and then in New Zealand, and then now in Colorado. This is really his first journey to the South. So I had the opportunity to take him for some Waffle House. I know that that's not for everybody, but he enjoyed his grits for the first time.
Right.
I got him to mix his over medium eggs with the grits. It was a win. It was a win for the South there. But also at the event, one of the ladies from Amplified Events went and got him some Nana pudding for him to try out. It was fantastic.
Now that's a culture shift.
That's a culture
from Ireland to Augusta. That's really good. Well, we're going to continue on the conversation, and Jason kind of calls it a flywheel, right?
Yes.
For the future.
So he recognizes the enormous work that went into getting this thing started. This flywheel is moving. This giant, heavy boulder has begun to roll, and there are a lot of people who have been very positively impacted by it. And so what we don't want to see is when we do this again next year, we don't want to try and get that moving again. And so that's where we're going to build some community, we're going to build some resources and some continual communications to keep that not only moving, but to get it moving a little more smoothly and a little more quickly and get more people on board.
And that will be part 2 of Culture Shift. It will be coming up, but we did want to thank our building sponsor, if you will, which is the folks at Augusta Podcasts, and I just so enjoy chatting. It just feels very comfortable here,
Very much so.
And just looks great, and we would encourage any businesses that want to communicate with the community to try and reach David and Chris. They've got a great website at augustapodcast.com. And as we record this, towards the end of November, they have passed 20 different themes of podcasts that are being put together for companies and community organizations. So that's neat.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
A lot of good work there.
And once again, reach Patrick at crosslinkconsulting.net.